The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience. Because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining me on this fantastic April evening. And, tonight we're going to just, I'm really looking forward to tonight because, growing up, I've seen a lot of Dracula. I've seen a lot of different iterations of Dracula. I've eventually, finally in high school, I read the original Bram Stoker novelization. And here's the thing, though, it's by the time that I think many of us were growing up and being in younger years, whatever, that we kind of just accept Dracula as existing, and that for some of us, that maybe we don't give a lot of thought to where Dracula came from and the person who wrote that book. And so this is really interesting for me tonight, because you do need to give credit to the people who created these characters, who've written these books, and these stories that have gone on for very long time now, and that they're going to be part of our culture for eternity. And luckily, there's somebody here that I have tonight that we are going to be talking about that in great detail. Neil R. Strorey is an award-winning historian and author of over 50 books. A graduate of UEA, he is an internationally recognized authority and lecturer on the dark history of Britain. Known for his groundbreaking research, Neil has a lifelong interest in Bram Stoker and has amassed one of the finest collections of Bram Stoker first editions, letters, and memorabilia in private hands. Neil frequently appears as guest expert on UK television and radio shows and international podcasts, and is a regular guest historian on the multi-award-winning Help! My House is Haunted. Tonight we're going to be talking about his book, Bram Stoker, author of Dracula, an Illustrated Biography. Neil, welcome to GhostBox Radio.
Hey, Greg, lovely to be with you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. We actually were talking about doing this since October, I think September of last year, right before you launched the book in the UK, and it was, very busy for you at that time. And, I'm just happy that we were able to get things worked out. You're a very busy person, which is a good thing.
It keeps me out of mischief, I have to say, and the UK launch was fabulous. And I think it's right that we speak in America now, because it's now available via Barnes & Noble, and it's sold really well, and it's been very well received by people who know and love the story, and people interested to know a lot more about Bram. And in saying that, I would first and foremost like to thank my friend Dacre Stoker and the Stoker family for their support throughout my project and interest throughout. One of the greatest challenges, having discovered all these letters from Bram Stoker, it's the hand that they're written in, because Bram wrote numerous letters every single day. He wrote very, very fast. If you've ever seen a doctor's prescription written out by hand, well, that's very much like Bram Stoker wrote. And we call it Stoker ease. And between the two of us, between Dacre and I, we could just about fathom it out.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, and so, and one of the things I think about here, and I'm going to jump around a little bit with my very potted history of what I know. Okay,
Yes.
Here we are. Dracula, the character itself now, I'm assuming that the Stoker family tries really hard to make sure that I don't know if maybe it doesn't even make sense that I'm saying this, that they're trying hard to kind of keep that light alive, but it's out of copyright. So is it more of a matter of them keeping Bram's story, so to speak, and the fact that he created this character, keeping that part of it alive, perhaps.
I think you're absolutely right. I think for many, many years, people didn't know who Bram Stoker was, really.
Yeah.
His notes for Dracula were comparatively recently discovered. It's in the last 20 years that they've come to light. So when I began my interest in Bram Stoker in the 1970s and 80s, they weren't around. So there was an awful lot of speculation about his influences, the sources that he had drawn on. So now that guesswork, a lot of it's removed because we can see his notes for Dracula and the letters that I found that Bram wrote to his dear friend Thomas Henry Hall Caine on the Isle of Man before, during, and after the publication of Dracula, reveal an awful lot about the man himself, his life, and writing of the book.
Wow. And that's the thing too. I don't think I realized that these letters were found that short a time ago. It's just like you think that some of that stuff is going to be around, because I also go back to remembering, was it not his widow that really fought for, like, when Nosferatu was being made, that this is you're taking his story, you're taking Bram's story. It's a ripoff of it. That I seem to recall that was a problem at the time, or something around that.
I think you're right. What happened was Bram died on the 20th of April 1912. So this month we'll see the anniversary of Bram's death. That was overshadowed in the newspapers by the sinking of the RMS Titanic.
Yeah.
So people kind of missed that. At the time of his death, his greatest literary legacy was seen as this 2-volumed personal recollections of Henry Irving, who was the greatest actor of his day. Henry Irving was the first actor to receive a knighthood. Irving made acting respectable. He had the Lyceum Theatre, and Bram Stoker was his acting manager. So he saw throughout Irving's career the rise of the great man. Anyway, so Dracula was one. There's about 10 novels, novellas, numerous articles, some of which are still being discovered. There's poetry. Bram did interviews with famous people, and the interviews that he gave to reporters around the country are still being discovered as more and more newspapers come online. So the legacy of Bram, I don't know whether Murnau, who was creating Nosferatu, thought that because Bram was dead, we can just make this story. He's thinly veiled the kind of Count Orlok character by using different names, but the imagery is absolutely iconic. I don't think Florrie Stoker, his widow, who had never really benefited from any money from the Dracula story, it's never been out of print since 1897, but it was successful, but not phenomenally in such a way that the Stoker family had a huge legacy from it. So when Nosferatu appears, it comes as quite a shock and a surprise to Florrie Stoker, and yes, she takes legal action against Murnau, and it was successful. A sizable award was made to her, and it never earned big money. So I think that's why they're still protective over his legacy, to show this is Bram's work. You have to remember, before 1897, when Dracula was first published, that word wasn't known to the British public. It was not a character in any way, shape, or form. So it was right that she took action. She demanded that every copy of Nosferatu be destroyed, which is why for many years only fragments of the film existed. I think it's good that it's now all put together, because it's an early vision of the Count, and I think a very good one in many ways. So it's glad we had that now. If only Murnau had worked with Florrie Stoker.
Right. Right. I mean, I forgot the fact that she had ordered all the copies to be destroyed, and I actually watched Nosferatu, I think just a couple weeks back, and it's a very nice restoration done by Kino, and
Yeah,
you're right. I mean, and it's a kind of interesting situation to be in where as like someone who's about film and television myself, to think that someone wants to destroy all these copies, but all she's trying to do is protect her husband's legacy as well.
that's right. And so it was when Universal Pictures came along, Florey was still alive. That he died first of all of exhaustion, and it's not surprising because the man was a work dynamo.
Mm-hmm.
He had liver failure. Well, he liked to drink, don't we all? There were some very late nights in the Beef Steak Club. He loved his good lived. A true gentleman. He would tell the most amazing stories, never resorting to vulgarity, but he had a story for every possible occasion. But the third cause of death it's listed as locomotor ataxia. Now, it's debated about exactly what it is. The medical historians that I've spoken to and those who have studied medicine in the past are pretty sure it's a nice way of saying he's died of a venereal disease, probably syphilis.
Okay.
Mrs. Stoker did not have that. So it just casts some light on what was the nature of the relationship between Bram and his wife. The kind of family story is that she didn't want to have an intimate relationship with Bram after the birth of their son. But we will never know the truth of that, nor who Bram had a liaison with, or how he actually contracted the syphilis. I hope that long term it won't overshadow the work of the great man himself.
And as you say that's the first thing that crossed my mind is like I mean, I know that people want to hear about everything about him. That's a complete picture of him. But to your point, I look at that as like, that's their deal. I'm much more interested in the part that you're talking about this amazing storyteller, the person who could tell a story about anything. I mean, that's the thing to me that is just exciting because we all know people like that, and it's such a wonderful gift to be able just to be able to make people happy just by the stories that they tell.
He would thrill and chill and make people. Some of his stories are very witty. He was the sort of guy, if you knew him and you were organizing a dinner party, you'd have to have Bram Stoker,
right?
Because he's not going to hog the conversation, but the conversation would never run thin if Bram is there. He was just from what I've read, and I've read many personal letters of people who have reminisced of the man himself. He was seen as a force of nature. If there was dancing, and in those days it would be kind of ballroom dancing, you'd have to clear out the way because he was a big, impressive man with a big red beard, a soft Irish accent. They said he had the paw of Hercules, the hand of Hercules, big, strong man.
Yep.
And he was, even into later life, very, very big, powerfully built. In his youth, he was athletic, played a good game of rugby. He was in the gym. He was a distance walker. There were cups and prizes still in the Stoker family from his sporting years. But also, he was known to have the smile of Machiavelli. And I love the thought of that he could tell you a deadpan tale and then he'd get the twinkle in his eye and that big smile. What a wonderful man.
Now, I'm just curious, as you saying that, was he, like you said, he is a storyteller. Was he a raconteur or more of a storyteller?
I think he was all of the above, depending on the occasion. If you could imagine traveling, and he went on tour to America with the Lyceum Company. It was one of the first ever British theatrical companies to tour America. And his travel log, which was published separately as a booklet called A Glimpse of America, is acknowledged as the first travel log of modern America. Wow. Because this is in the 1880s. So you're seeing this is the age of what would be known as the Wild West. Yeah. It's the age of the growth of great cities in America where they have theaters, where they have fire brigades, because Bram was fascinated with fires. And he got to know fire chiefs so he could go and attend the fires and even walk inside with the firemen. the travelogue is really a very good one. And if you ever get a chance to read A Glimpse of America, I would thoroughly recommend it, because he was certainly, and he loved America and all about it, and the birth of this country. You can feel the modern America, the urban America, but also still traveling on the trains and the difficulties sometimes of traveling at those times. He captures it all so eloquently. So it's beyond the gunslingers, beyond the dust. This is new modern America in one booklet.
Did he pretty much do an extensive tour of America when he did that?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, so you could see some of the young cities. You could see some of the towns that are emerging there. It's an exciting book. I think it's a thumping good read. But what would you expect from a man who can he wrote very well. Most of his books, like Dracula, he never traveled to Transylvania, but he used the travel guides. He even used train timetables and tourist guides to the place to create it. Well, and it's eloquent and it's well written. It takes you there. It really does set the scene. But this is something he saw for himself, the people he met, the country he saw. I think it's exciting. It's different. Other explorers who were exploring different parts of the world. I mean, it's an exciting time for exploration, full stop.
Yeah.
Said, we take Glimpse of America with us and we read it when we are traveling. So, yes, his observations, his raconteur tales would certainly be told when they were traveling. Over the dinner table at dinners, places like the Beefsteak Club was a small room where the Beefsteak Club used to meet in the 19th century. Then that had folded, so it had become a storeroom. So Bram Stoker cleared that, so that rather than having sort of sandwiches sat on the stage after the show, you could sit down and have somewhere to eat.
Nice.
And this place, I mean, it became phenomenally expensive because it became this exclusive dining room for the explorers, the rich, the famous, the landed gentry, royalty from across Europe and Great Britain would guest in this room. And of course, and the menus survive. I own some of the menus that are signed by all of those present. And you just wish that you weren't a fly on the wall. Hell no, that would drive me mad. I'd rather be swatted, be sat at that table and hear the stories that were exchanged from people like Richard Burton, the explorer and Orientalist, not the actor.
No. And
he had a face like steel, and he was able to sort of disguise himself and move in the Middle East and travel Oriental countries. He's a very good translator, but he was hard as steel. And he's one of the faces on the opposite side of the table at the Beefsteak Club that helped inspire Dracula. Alfred Lord Tennyson, who wrote The Charge of the Light Brigade poem, he used to sit opposite Bram. They became friends. He wrote plays for the Lyceum. And Bram recalls how Tennyson had a canine tooth that when he was thinking about somebody he didn't like very much, Tennyson would show the canine tooth, and he was thinking a sort of snarl. So there we are, the extended canines of Dracula. That's coming from Tennyson. The face of Dracula from Richard Burton. And Henry Morton Stanley, if you've ever heard of the phrase Dr. Livingstone, I presume.
Yep.
Well, the man who said that, the man who went and found him, was Henry Morton Stanley. His hair had gone white. His face was very leathery, but he had a big white moustache. And when you look at the first paperback edition of Dracula, you can really see Morton Stanley on that illustration that had been approved by Bram Stoker, the only approved picture of Dracula created in Bram Stoker's lifetime. So these people that Bram met, he drew upon them, and not to mention Arminius Vambery, who gets a special mention in the book as our friend in Budapest. He was an eloquent university man, a traveller, a spy, and it's thought that he was the first person really to introduce the notion of this thing called a vampire, W-A-M-P-Y or I-R, the vampire, and Bram loved that. And in fact, his initial working documents had Count Vampire and the Undead. That was the original kind of working title of the book.
Wow. That's incredible. Why don't we go ahead and do this? Let's take our first break. When we come back, I want to get into the book itself. The book is called Bram Stoker, Author of Dracula, an Illustrated Biography. Not so much even getting in the book, but understanding a little bit more about what Neil's obsession, perhaps, about Bram Stoker is all about. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Are you one of thousands of individuals who know you have psychic abilities but don't know how to tap into your higher self? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who offers classes that can help you reach your goals. Refined Divine holds classes Monday and Thursday at her 2 locations and via Zoom. Classes consist of manifestation, learning psychic abilities, shadow work, and healing trauma. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
This is Psychic Medium Deb. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. Like you, I love good, fresh, delicious food. So I want to tell you about this treasure in Roseville called Maverick's Real Roast Beef. Maverick's has the best roast beef sandwiches I've ever had. Made fresh every order. Add fries or onion rings dropped in the fryer when ordered, and you have a winning combination. Maverick's Real Roast Beef has a lot more than roast beef, so check out their website, mavericksbeef.com, or check out their restaurant on Lexington in Roseville.
Reach your highest level of consciousness and well-being with MetamorphosisConnections.com. MetamorphosisConnections.com is an online directory of the best holistic and metaphysical practitioners to help you make your most informed choices. You can search MetamorphosisConnections.com for classes, events, wellness and life coaches, plus metaphysical products and shops. You can also search for a wide array of healers from all modalities, including EFT, sound healing, energy healing, light therapy, ancestral healing, shamanic healing, reflexology, past life regressions, hypnotherapy, yoga, and more. And if you're not sure where to start, the search feature on MetamorphosisConnections.com is tailored to help both those who know what they are looking for and those who are just starting. Come explore the possibilities for your higher self by visiting MetamorphosisConnections.com. Their experienced practitioners can guide both beginners and those that are already on their spiritual journey. That's MetamorphosisConnection.com, your link to direct you on your spiritual transformation.
Did you know that spiritual awakening is not all love and light? Surprise! Inner demons, ego deaths, and tower moments are on the horizon. But while life might hand you some harsh lessons, we've got the antidote to soothe your weary soul. Why not try a dragon's blood bath? Or schedule a Reiki aura repair? With books, herbs, talismans, candles, and more, we put the Shazam in shadow work. Visit Magus Books at 1848 Central Avenue Northeast in Minneapolis or magusbooks.com.
The Tilted Tiki, located in downtown Stillwater, helps you get your tropical tiki vibe on with a large selection of fantastic tasting tiki cocktails served in unique and fun glasses, a menu of delicious food ranging from small bites, craft tacos, sandwiches, and more. Plus, don't forget they have live music Wednesday through Saturday nights. Located in downtown Stillwater, the Tilted Tiki is your tropical relaxation restaurant in Minnesota. Visit thetiltedtiki.com.
Come on out to the Charvinity Psychic and Healing Fair in collaboration with Maria Shaw Minneapolis Convention, May 18th and 19th at the Doubletree by Hilton Minneapolis Airport Hotel, formerly known as the Marriott Airport Hotel. The Charvinity Psychic and Healing Fair features a selection of highly skilled and exceptional local psychic readers, healers, and practitioners, ensuring a wide array of premium services like Reiki, past life regression, and so much more. All practitioners offer something unique to help you. You can pre-book practitioners before going to the event and even possibly win a gift basket by visiting 5 or more practitioners at the fair. Also, if you pre-book and prepay for a 30-minute session, you get a weekend pass for Maria's classes for free, normally a $59 value. And the first 25 people who show up Saturday and Sunday will get a free gift bag. Charvinity Psychic and Healing Fair is May 18th and 19th at the Doubletree by Hilton, Minneapolis Airport, 9 to 5 both days. It's only $10 to get in. Visit charvinityfairs.com for all the details.
And welcome back to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. We're having a fantastic conversation, and I'm actually getting kind of bummed out about it because I know we're not going to get nearly as far as I'd like to because there's so much to this. We have on author, historian, just general, overall expert on a lot of things, Neil Strorey. We're talking about his book that's just made its way out over here in the U.S., Bram Stoker, Author of Dracula, an Illustrated Biography. You can get it through Barnes & Noble. You can also get it through Amazon. There's a lot of ways to get this, and I highly recommend it. And Neil, we were talking about just Bram in general. There's just so much to talk about, and you were kind of talking about the different influences, especially when he traveled, which eventually made it into Dracula. The book itself. My question to you, though, is, you have this, you've taken up this mantle. You are very much inspired by him. What is it that got you into that?
Being scared. At a very early age. I used to walk past our local cinema when I was a lad, and provincial cinema. I grew up in a county called Norfolk in England.
Yep.
It's the bump. If you look at a map of Great Britain, we're the bump on the side and we're the top bit. And walking to school, we walked past a cinema, and I would only have been, 6, 7 years of age. And they were releasing Hammer films.
Yeah.
And I'm used to seeing adverts for Lady and the Tramp. You're really used to seeing pictures for what they call the carry-on films in Great Britain, which are comedy films. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly I see this image of a face of a man, vicious looking eyes. The poster is dripping with blood. It's called Taste the Blood of Dracula. Has a horrible byline across the top of it stating drink a pint of blood a day. And he's got fangs. And I was frightened. I'd never seen anything quite like that. We didn't have the internet in the 1970s.
No.
Images could really strike you. And this certainly struck me. And as I couldn't go and see the film, even if I'd wanted to. It was X certificate in the UK. But what I could do is go to my local newsagent and purchase bubblegum cards from Topps. Mm-hmm. And you had a nasty kind of chalky bubblegum and 3 full-color movie film stars, cards, mostly from the film Dracula AD 1972. And they're full color. It's got Dracula there. There's a picture of him in Victorian Britain, in modern Britain. There's blood all down the necks of these girls. And to be honest with you, even the blooming cards frightened me after a while. So much so I had to give them to my mum and get her to take them away. And not even throw them in the bin because I couldn't look at them. As a little aside, when I was writing the book, I managed to track down some of these cards through the wonderful online auction that we all know.
Yep.
And I showed them to my granddaughters, who were around about my age, my little granddaughter Ivy. And she was, 7, 8 years old at the time. And, it was just a funny man in an old-fashioned costume. There was no terror. And I'm glad she wasn't frightened. But there was, and friends, that said, do you mind if I show the kids these? No. And the same thing happened. There's just nothing. It's nothing. So maybe we kids of the 1960s and 70s, I'm a 70s kid, and the 80s, maybe we're the last children of Dracula, the last children to be frightened. And it's not terrified. It's kind of the chills down the spine and the sort of fright that you had from those films. And there were magazines and books that came out at the time. So as I got older into my teens, I read Dracula. I tried to watch some of the films into my early teens, and I was allowed to stay up late. They're normally on at 10 o'clock. And my family knew I'd be going to bed very promptly. Oh, yes, you can watch that. I could hardly get past the starting titles. And then you start to see a little glimpse of the red lining of the cape. And I remember that when Dracula AD 1972 came out, this incredible coach chase across one of the London parks. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
These are horse-drawn coaches, whipped up. And, there's Peter Cushing, there's Christopher Lee as Dracula whipping up, and you could see his red eyes, the terror. And I sort of ducked away. And I remember, I think that was my dear old mum said, oh, Neil, that's all right. It's all right now. And I came back around the lounge door, peeking my head. And I'm sure she didn't know the film worked like this, because the coach had run off the road, and I saw this flick of the cape. I thought, oh, there he is. And then he turns around, and there's Dracula with this cartwheel with the stake right through his heart. His eyes are bleeding blood. Yet, thanks, Mum. Neil went to bed. He was gone. Woo, gone. No more.
Yep.
So, the legacy was always for me, who was Dracula?
Yeah.
And as you get a little bit older, you think, who the hell created that?
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Because I'd never seen anything like that in my life.
No. So it's interesting. I mean, it makes sense that your first influence would have been Hammer films. And when you're saying it, something came to my mind here. I always think of like the term gothic horror when I think of the Hammer films.
Absolutely right.
Do you think was that genre inadvertently created by Bram?
I don't think we would have vampire films, ghouls. I mean, Bram Stoker also wrote The Jewel of the Seven Stars, which is one of the very first books ever to have a reanimated mummy in it. So we owe that to him too. You look at the 19th century literature before Dracula, you've got things like Varney the Vampire, this part work, and he's a kind of aristocrat, but he's a bit bumbly, and he sometimes makes people jump, but it just doesn't have the qualities of Dracula and the Hammer world that was created. It's Victorian, but not quite, because they've got 1960s hairdos.
Right.
And the costumes are not quite right as we'd know it. But Hammer world takes you to a place of red drapes and fire and candle, darkness, shadow, fear, strange-looking locals in strange-looking places. So maybe we had something of what Bram evoked in the Victorian readership in his day. For us in the 60s and 70s, it was kind of reborn through those Hammer films. And the genre, everything from Lost Boys to Blade or anything else, we owe that to Bram Stoker. Yeah,
very much so. It's very interesting, and when I think about when reading Dracula, it evokes like first, if you haven't read it, first of all, it's not a straightforward prose. It's a series of letters, which at first for me was like, I don't know about that, but it works well in the favor of the story, because you have to see this story from other angles to be able to understand what this character is. And
you're absolutely right. And in fact, Bram followed on from his friend Wilkie Collins. Wilkie Collins in The Woman in White had the story told in various diaries and letters. But Bram put something new into that. Bram embraced the modern world of technology. So he has typewriters in there. Not only that, women operating typewriters like Mina with her journals. And interestingly enough, the woman that operated the typewriter in the Bram Stoker household was actually Florrie. It was Bram's wife, and he used to read her parts of the book. So she's part of the genesis and the characters of Dracula, without doubt. She used to hear the stories, comment on them, they discuss them. So we owe something to her as well. But it wasn't just typewriters; it was the modern world of transport, of trains, and also Dr. Seward records his diary on cylinder, which is seems antiquated to us, but it was the modern world that Bram was showing, encountering the ancient world. And the modern world had dismissed all this folklore. Oh, that's absolutely rubbish. But if the modern world dismisses all of that, something from the old world that we don't know how to kill, a bullet, a modern weapon, cannot kill Dracula. And I think that's a really interesting juxtaposition.
It is, and what happens to the people who are his victims, and even after they're victims, and that they're what the afterlife looks like in those situations. It's so easy to take for granted those positions because it's been a part of our lives, our whole lives. But to think back, as you are, we're talking about the wax cylinders and everything like that, of like. Imagine people reading this for the first time and just being blown away by the concepts of horror in this book.
You're absolutely right. It did blow people away. And it's interesting. The first edition of Dracula was published in a yellow cover, a yellow binding, with blood red lettering for the word Dracula. And I thought it looked odd. I was expecting it to be a black cover with a bat on it, either silver lettering. But the blood red lettering's there. Why yellow? But if you bought a decadent book, a daring book from France, it would have a yellow binding. In Britain, there was something called the Yellow Book that artists like Aubrey Beardsley, Rossetti, the sort of edgy latest artists, the sort of really pushing the boundaries, were in this Yellow Book. It wasn't a vulgar book, but it was the very latest of literature, but with a little bit of an edge to it. So Bram, to go for the yellow cover, implied that, and not to mention that when Oscar Wilde was arrested, it was said a copy of the Yellow Book was found under his arm. So it's you've got that feeling, and if you find a first edition, it's believed it had a plain white dust wrapper with the red writing on it, which is just like if you'd bought one of those decadent books from France and you wanted to get it through customs. That's why they slipped the white cover on top. So it from the very moment you saw it. But imagine, the British public had never seen the word or name Dracula. No. They did not know who or what that was. Originally, as we say, it was going to be Count Wampire and the Undead. It was only when Bram went to Whitby and he saw the wreck of a ship that was called the Dimitri, and which became the Demeter, and he heard the story of the wrecking. He went to Whitby Library, probably to investigate where the boat came from Varna, and in doing so, he saw Wilkinson's Guide to Wallachia, which is an early 19th century book about Wallachia and Transylvania and travels there by Wilkinson. And looking through that book, and the notes are quite clear about this, it's when Bram discovered the name Dracula, and he underlines it. He notes the number of the book and the title. This changed everything. So when, for copyright reasons, in 1897, Dracula was staged on the Lyceum stage for the first time. It was a read-through, really. But it was called Dracula or the Undead, or Dracula and the Undead. By the time the book came out, you've just got that one name on there. It's simply called Dracula. So that was a world that had never heard that name, but it captured the imagination. People have talked, and quite rightly, they looked for the sources of it. Bram would have known from the book that Dracula meant demon or devil in Transylvania, in the language out there. But he did not. There's no mention in any of the notes of Vlad Tepes, of Vlad the Impaler, or anything like that. There's no copy of the famous woodcut that you will see. And having never visited Transylvania, it makes that link very, very thin now. It was an assumption that lingers, but I'm afraid all Bram saw was that word and its translation, and it was the name that, in the book, Dracula is a voivode. He's a mercenary. And actually, in that book, he's not a desperately good one. So it's just the name. It's just the name that captured Bram's imagination.
Why don't we do this? Let's go ahead, take our next break. When we come back, boy, I want to talk more about the book. I want to talk more about Bram. It just is just such a fun conversation, and I'm really enjoying this. I hope you are too. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
Need a stone to change your luck or break a curse? Try Larvikite, known for its hex-breaking powers. Need an herb to repel negative spirits? Try Rue, used to repel demons and jinn. Want to create a decoy so black magic can't touch you? Make a witch bottle. For more magical advice, visit Magus Books in Minneapolis. We've got the tools and the expert advice you need to succeed against the dark arts. Find us at 1848 Central Avenue Northeast in Minneapolis or at magusbooks.com.
Reach your highest level of consciousness and well-being with MetamorphosisConnections.com. Metamorphosisconnections.com is an online directory of the best holistic and metaphysical practitioners to help you make your most informed choices. You can search Metamorphosisconnections.com for classes, events, wellness and life coaches, plus metaphysical products and shops. You can also search for a wide array of healers from all modalities, including EFT, sound healing, energy healing, light therapy, ancestral healing, shamanic healing, reflexology, past life regressions, hypnotherapy, yoga, and more. And if you're not sure where to start, the search feature on metamorphosisconnections.com is tailored to help both those who know what they are looking for and those who are just starting. Come explore the possibilities for your higher self by visiting metamorphosisconnections.com. Their experienced practitioners can guide both beginners and those that are already on their spiritual journey. That's metamorphosisconnection.com, your link to direct you on your spiritual transformation.
The Tilted Tiki, located in downtown Stillwater, helps you get your tropical tiki vibe on with a large selection of fantastic tasting tiki cocktails served in unique and fun glasses, a menu of delicious food ranging from small bites, craft tacos, sandwiches, and more. Plus, don't forget they have live music Wednesday through Saturday nights. Located in downtown Stillwater, the Tilted Tiki is your tropical relaxation restaurant in Minnesota. Visit thetiltedtiki.com. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Come on out to the Charvinity Psychic and Healing Fair in collaboration with Maria Shaw Minneapolis Convention, May 18th and 19th at the Doubletree by Hilton Minneapolis Airport Hotel, formerly known as the Marriott Airport Hotel. The Charvinity Psychic and Healing Fair features a selection of highly skilled and exceptional local psychic readers, healers, and practitioners, ensuring a wide array of premium services like Reiki, past life regression, and so much more. All practitioners offer something unique to help you. You can pre-book practitioners before going to the event and even possibly win a gift basket by visiting 5 or more practitioners at the fair. Also, if you pre-book and prepay for a 30-minute session, you get a weekend pass for Maria's classes for free, normally a $59 value. And the first 25 people who show up Saturday and Sunday will get a free gift bag. Charvinity Psychic and Healing Fair is May 18th and 19th at the Doubletree by Hilton, Minneapolis Airport, 9 to 5 both days. It's only $10 to get in. Visit charvinityfairs.com for all the details.
And welcome back to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're talking with Neil Strorey. He's an author, and we've been talking about we're really focusing on one book tonight. He's written many books. So if you go over to Amazon and you click his name, you're going to see all the stuff that he's written. But we're talking about Bram Stoker, author of Dracula, an Illustrated Biography. And this is, Neil, obviously this is something very close to your heart, wanting to do this. How long did it take you to put this book together?
Wow. I first started collecting books and Dracula memorabilia, I suppose, in the late 1970s, 1980s. So it's been a lot of decades, serious collecting maybe over the last 30 years. So in those days, you could pick first editions up quite reasonably. But still a first edition Dracula eludes me, but I've got second impressions of it. And it'll come one day, but they're about £12,000 nowadays, so it's quite a wedge of money.
Well, you being an author, obviously that's chicken scratch. I mean, authors make so much money. You don't do it to get rich, do you? No. So, did you feel like there was a hole in kind of the history of Bram Stoker in terms of like people needed to they needed your book because there's stuff that you felt was maybe missing that you wanted to kind of fill that hole.
I absolutely agree. There have been a number of biographies of Bram over the years, and each one of them brings something new to the table. The first one was Harry Ludlam, and then you've got other authors that have come in subsequently. They all bring something new, and I would not have written the book if I didn't feel that some new images needed to be shared and new stories, and it really came from the discovery of the letters. I'll be absolutely honest. When I went to, I've taught on the Isle of Man at King William's College, and I would call in the Isle of Man archives initially on the trail of Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
Because Thomas Henry Hall Caine, most people will not have heard of him today. In Bram's day, he was one of the greatest authors. He was the first man to sell 1 million books in the English language, Hall Caine. Bram and Hall Caine had known each other through the theatre. They were both big fans of Henry Irving. They became, when two great fans meet, they either hate each other or they become really good friends. Yeah. And I'm glad that they became really good pals. But what I discovered was, I put together a few pieces that Hall Caine had a very intimate relationship before he knew Bram in the 1870s with a man called Dr. He was a quack doctor. He's commonly referred to as Dr. Francis Tumblety. He was the #1 special branch suspect for Jack the Ripper. My friend Stuart Evans, well over 20 years ago now, came across this letter that named Tumblety and produced his excellent account of Tumblety and how he could be a viable suspect for the Ripper. Based on this letter from Chief Inspector Littlechild, British Special Branch is an elite police unit responsible for the security of Great Britain. He was clearly aware of Tumblety. He names him in the letter and says there's a big file on him in Scotland Yard. Still to find that file, I might add. But I knew that Tumblety and Hall Caine had this relationship. Thanks to Vivian Allen's appearance on the documentary about the discovery of the letter naming Tumblety, Vivian Allen is the biographer of Hall Caine, and she mentioned this link with Tumblety, and I had to wait approximately 10 years while the collection had to be held back due to family reasons associated with Hall Caine. Nothing dark, but there was a family reason. And then when they were released, it took about 10 years to catalogue them, which included letters from Wilkie Collins as well, which is how we know about Bram's friendship with Wilkie Collins as well, and a host of other notable characters of the day. And I think there's over 50 letters and telegrams between Tumblety and Hall Caine, and we had those examined by Ruth Myers, who is an expert witness. She's taken part in some of the biggest murder investigations and cases in Great Britain. I said to her, look, there's no catch to this. Would you examine the handwriting? And it looks like the letters from Tumblety are written by different people. But she said, no, they're all by him.
Wow.
He's not dictating them. It's the way his characters can change. Anyway, I published The Dracula Secrets, which looks at the influence of the Jack the Ripper crimes and the world of the 1880s, 1890s that Bram knew and drew upon to create Dracula. It was also, by the way, that on the stage of the Lyceum Theatre, at the time of the Jack the Ripper killings, Richard Mansfield, the actor, was sort of launching his stage play, giving its first airing in London of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh.
So this idea of a man that can drink a potion and be a gentleman who can drink a potion and become a monster. So that crime was seen to, or believed to, influence the crimes of Jack the Ripper. So that it's all in the air. And I thought, why not create a book about that? But when I went through the archive, I went through the last box of letters where there might have been Tumblety's. We finished that box together. I'm always be grateful to the Isle of Man Archives for giving me that privilege. And then I was the first person to see all of those. But I noticed that there were quite a lot of Bram Stoker letters. And I thought, ooh. So I photographed all of them with the idea of doing something one day. And it really has taken this long, to over 10 years, to collate, to really focus on developing my collection, finding unpublished letters from Bram Stoker himself, and finding them in archives around the country, and in fact in Britain and America, where the manuscripts are. Folger Institute, they've got the manuscript for it's Bram Stoker's personal reminiscences of Henry Irving. And you might think, well, why would I bother with that? Well, a lot of things are crossed out from that, and that's Bram's own account, his sort of involvement in the Irving story, and the glimpses of Bram Stoker. His scrapbooks still exist. They're in Stratford upon Avon. So it was a real international effort to create the book, and I didn't want to rush it. I knew that more would be emerging as more newspapers turned out as well. So yeah, it's timely. There's even a pen and ink drawing that was made for a magazine illustration of Bram and his wife Florrie as they departed from Britain on one of the last American tours of by the Lyceum. And it's the only known pen and ink sketch, or only known illustration or photograph of Bram and Florrie together. So it's special. I hope it brings lots of new things to the table.
It's amazing the stuff that is still being found when you think about it. And once again, folks, I'm talking with Neil Strorey. The book is called Bram Stoker, Author of Dracula, an Illustrated Biography. It's available on Barnes & Noble. It's also available on Amazon. You know, I got to ask you, and you may have already answered this because of an answer earlier. Do you have a favorite interpretation, like a screen interpretation of Dracula?
Yes. Well, my personal favorite are the Hammer films, because they evoke what I think, because some of the sets are a little bit wobbly, they're a little bit fantasy. I think it's very much kind of Bram's vision of how it would, or how I would imagine, and the interpretations like Taste the Blood of Dracula and other various Scars of Dracula, Dracula AD 72, all carry on that legacy very well. But the best screen interpretation, the most loyal one that I know of, was actually a film made by the BBC in the 1970s with Louis Jourdain, and they actually filmed it on location in Whitby.
Yep.
And that was just, it's got all of the atmosphere. It's got some superb actors and actresses. In those days, it was actors and actresses, but it captures the atmosphere. It's a little bit dated, but I think it takes you there. I think it's a damn good watch, and I would thoroughly recommend it.
I was going to say, because that's my favorite, and it's a 1977 production, and to your point, that it's BBC at the time. It's a mix of videotape and film, but it's every part of it is absolutely spot on, and it's such a good production. I definitely would agree with it. What did you think of the Gatiss Moffat version of Dracula from about 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, and I like both of those guys. They do a lot to bring Gothic horror to modern audiences, and I respect them for that. But my answer is in two parts. Was it a faithful representation of Dracula? The imagery I felt was iconic in places, and I admire Mark's homage to the Hammer films. That, and some of the ideas that were in there were very good. This idea of shape shifting and coming out of a creature, and the attack on the on the nun. So that's all, but it ain't Dracula.
No,
And my personal feeling would be using all of that funding, all of that modern technology and the effects. One really good, loyal telling of the tale would have been great. I would have really appreciated that, and I think they could have done that. And then when you want to develop it further, to bring in the quirky ideas of their own, so that could be like a sort of Dracula 2, a Dracula's guest, so to speak.
Right.
That takes the story a lot further. But let's face it, the undead need to be immortal, otherwise we forget them. So if you pan something, there won't be no more. And I think it's worthwhile saying, okay, this has existed, and I think we need it's worth a watch. But I think we're still waiting for a modern adaptation that's very loyal to the books. I'd love to be involved with it. I'd love to work with those guys, but sadly, I think we're still waiting for that adaptation to happen.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, and I think it's a very good point that just because it's not completely, say, our cup of tea or whatever, that you're finding the right merits in the production. And once again, to your point, that it's good that that Dracula is still very much in the public eye in some form, and that it'd be nice to have those moments. The first 2 episodes of Dracula that take place in his castle are beautiful, just beautiful, very well made. So I would agree with that as well. Once again, the book is called Bram Stoker, Author of Dracula. It is an illustrated biography, hardcover. You can get it through Amazon. You can get it through Barnes and Noble. Please get it. This is a fantastic book. A lot of work has gone into this. Neil, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate this.
Greg, it's an absolute pleasure, and I hope to join you again sometime. We'll tell some more tales of Bram Stoker and Dracula.
I have a feeling there's a lot more that we can talk about than just Bram Stoker as well, with everything that you've written. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
A pleasure, Greg. Thank you.
And thank you all very much for joining us tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. Everyone, have a great night. Take care.